for the weather report, Haley, and now we will discuss the constitutional effects in this case, which went all the way to the Supreme Court. And we're going to have two very special guests come and talk to us today who were present at the flag burning. They were bystanders at the convention and have been following this case and have been educated on it meticulously. And they're going to talk to us today about the famous Texas versus Johnson case. Everybody, all of our viewers, please help me in welcoming our first guest, Mr. Matthew Sullivan, to the room today. Mr. Sullivan, how are you doing? Good to have you here.
Pleasure to be here. Appreciate it.
Well, all right, Mr. Sullivan, you know the topic at hand, so why don't you give the younger viewers a little bit of background as to what happened during the time the scene occurred?
Yeah, of course. So in 1984, the Republican convention took place in Dallas, Texas, and President Ronald Reagan was being nominated as the GOP candidate for president. And Reagan was running for a second term as president, and all of you know not everybody wanted that. One particular citizen, Gregory Lee Johnson, was handed an American flag, and when they reached the Dallas City Hall, he set the flag on fire. Nobody was hurt physically, but many were disturbed by this action. In fact, the Texas state had a statute that it was a crime to vandalize a respected object, like the American flag.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Sullivan. Is there anything else you can remember from that day that you can tell us?
Yeah, so I remember that Johnson was sentenced to 1 year in prison and was required to pay a fine of $2,000. Also, Johnson appealed and his case got sent to the Supreme Court, and he argued that Texas flag desecration was a law that was violating the First Amendment. And Texas argued that the law was used to preserve the flag as a symbol for national unity.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Sullivan. Would you care to offer your personal opinion on flag burning?
Yeah, so my personal opinion about flag burning is I do not agree with it whatsoever. I believe our flag is a symbol for our freedom and the country we live in, and troops put their lives on the line out in the battlefields, and they risk their lives, and not many of them survive. So for people to burn our flag, I find that very disrespectful for our country and especially our troops.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sullivan, for your opinion that you gave us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And now we'll be taking a quick break, and our next guest will be joining us quickly after the break. To the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
No problem, man. Welcome.
Thank you.
Greetings. Okay, so we just heard from our last guest a little bit about the background of Texas versus Johnson and what was going on during the time period of the event. I would actually like you to tell me exactly what happened that day, Mr. Vigor.
All right, so yeah, I was there, as you know, and I actually remember it like it was yesterday. Reagan was about to give his speech.
Fuck Reagan!
The protesters were howling. Even though Reagan would eventually win the election in a landslide, they were going crazy. Eventually, someone would start a fire.
Fuck this flag. Do it,
We would learn it was a flag. Someone burning the American flag.
Wow, dude, that's some interesting stuff. I couldn't even imagine being there.
No, for sure, bro. I mean, I've seen some crazy things in my day, but that's gotta be the kicker. And I'll definitely not forget that until the day I die, like when I hit that grave.
Some important stuff, man. Do you happen to remember the opinions of the Supreme Court in this case?
Yeah, actually I do. So the court, it was a very close decision. It was 5-4. They actually agreed with Johnson. So they got rid of the Texas law, and they expressed that burning the U.S. flag was expressive conduct of the First Amendment. They said that the First Amendment expands to much more than just what's written or spoken.
Okay.
And they continued by saying the government cannot prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society finds itself finding it offensive or disagreeable.
So now we know where the court stands. Could you elaborate on what the majority and minority leaders had to say on their respective sides?
Definitely. I actually have some things written down on my paper, like exact things that they said. Like, I don't want to bring any fake news to your channel.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So the majority, they stated in particular, the majority noted that the Texas law discriminated upon a viewpoint. Although the law punished actions such as flag burning that might arouse anger in others, it specifically exempted from prosecution actions that were respectful of venerated objects. Burning and bearing a worn-out flag, the majority said that the government could not discriminate in this manner based solely upon the viewpoint. So that was the majority's opinion,
Okay.
and now I'll go on to the minority if you
Alright.
still want to hear that.
No, yeah, continue.
So writing for the dissent, Justice Stevens agreed that the flag's unique statue as a symbol of national unity outweighed symbolic speech concerns, and thus the government could lawfully prohibit flag burning. And then I have one more for you guys, like a little special bonus. It's the concurring opinion.
Please elaborate.
So the majority of the court, according to Justice William Brennan, agreed with Johnson and held that the flag burning constitutes a form of symbolic speech that is protected by the First Amendment.
All right, Mr. Vigdor, that wraps up our interview today. I would like to say thank you for you to coming and joining us on stage. We appreciate having you here, man.
It was a goddamn pleasure.
Pleasure to have you here.
Hello, I'm Cisco. And in this Texas versus Johnson case, the Supreme Court raised the issue of not just whether burning the flag was unconstitutional, but if the actions could actually be counted in our free speech. I believe this was addressed by the Supreme Court in their ruling, as it was the main thing they were arguing. If they had disagreed, they would have ruled Johnson guilty, yet he walked away a free man with the Supreme Court on his side. They agreed that burning the flag was and is related to free speech, and stated that even if it may offend or insult, it doesn't mean that the US government has the right to take away the fundamental right of free speech from Americans. That is as long as it doesn't physically hurt anyone. But now, to ask the public on their thoughts.
Do you think that Johnson burning the flag was part of his First Amendment right?
Yes, because in the First Amendment you have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, like the free exercise clause and the establishment clause, and they all rule in like how he can. It doesn't say that you can't burn the flag, so yeah, it's unconstitutional.
All right, thank you.
Do you think the result of the Texas versus Johnson case was unconstitutional or constitutional?
I think it was unconstitutional because I think burning the flag is disrespectful to America.
Hello, I'm Cisco Berta, and today I will be covering the public's opinion and the impact of the Texas versus Johnson case. Now, as you can clearly see, Texas versus Johnson was a very important case in US history. It challenged how far the First Amendment really goes. It is a case where even it is still debated today. The majority of Americans are still against flag burning, but after Texas versus Johnson, well, it is still very legal to do so despite other people's opinions. This case had a lot of influences in the American society. This law extended the meaning of the First Amendment by actions being the same as speech. This was met with a lot of disapproval though, and Congress were one of the first people to act by passing a flag protection bill a couple months later. This bill made it illegal to, and I quote, deface, damage, or otherwise physically mistreat an American flag in any way that the person knows will seriously offend one or more people likely to observe or discover his action. A year later, this law was brought up in the Supreme case called Eichmann versus the United States. Texas versus Johnson was the precedent in this case to help Eichmann beat the United States and make this bill, well, illegal. Since then, Congress tried 6 more times to make it an amendment of not being able to burn the flag, but every single time, the Senate always said no in the end. The last time this occurred was back in 2006, where by 1 vote in the Senate, it did not become an amendment. This court case had a serious impact on America, not for what it did, but for showing how we are as a country. Compared to the EU, where the flag burning is strictly illegal. This case shows how much America can still really be called the land of the free. Because even though we are systematically divided on major issues, when it comes to free speech, we can truly call it free.